Welcome to the 5-minute sourdough bread tutorial. Sourdough takes more than 5 minutes to make, but it's usually about a full day, about a 20 to 24 hour process, but it only takes about 5 minutes, and you'll see that from the video today. Now this is if you've already got starters. The first thing is to go and get your starter. I keep mine in the fridge. I try to keep about a cup of starter on hand. And the first step is to wake the starter up or bring it alive. So we're gonna do that. To do that, so again, to wake up the starter after it's been in the fridge for a while, got about a cup of starter. So I'm gonna add about a cup of flour. Then a cup of water. You can use bottled water. I'm just getting some out of my sink. About a cup of each. So you mix it in thirds. So 1 cup starter, 1 cup flour, 1 cup of water. Mix it up. It'll be kind of a cake type consistency. Once that's all mixed up, then you're just gonna let it sit. So this is the first step. Pull the starter out of the fridge. It's been kind of dormant, and make it come alive with 1 cup. I've got this little line here, or this little hair tie. And put this there. That's gonna show as it rises. So that's how much starter I have. It's gonna rise probably about close to the top here in a couple hours. So now I'll just let this sit for about 2 to 3 hours while that rises, and then we'll go to the next step. Now moving on to our second step of the process, you can see that the starter has risen. It's gone up almost to the top. And so we're gonna move forward and make the dough now. So we're gonna make 2 loaves of sourdough. So we're gonna start with 3.5 cups of water here in this bowl. This is just filtered tap water. 1, 2, 3.5. And then we're gonna mix in about a third to a half a cup of starter. I'm not gonna measure this, I'm just gonna pour it in. One way to test to see if your starter works is that it'll float. When it's in here, it means it's active and alive, and you can see that's floating. And just put the starter in there and then just beat that up. With the wire whisk, I'll just beat that. And it becomes kind of a milky texture and color. And from there, we're gonna add, we're gonna add 8 cups of flour. So this is just the Costco bread flour, Lehigh roller mills, and I'm gonna put in 8 cups of flour into my bowl. And again, this is gonna make 2 loaves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's 8 cups of flour, and then 4 teaspoons of salt. Any kind of salt will do. 2, 3, 4. And then I'm just gonna mix this up. Use the wooden spoon, just mix and mix. This is the longest process of the making of the sourdough, is putting it all together and mixing it. As this goes, I'm gonna put the camera down for a second, just keep mixing away. You wanna get all the flour mixed in with that water. It becomes kind of thick. mix this for a couple minutes, maybe a minute or two. Just to get all that moisture and flour mixed in together. Kind of starting to get a big clumpy, you can see kind of a clumpy dough mixture. Once that gets pretty mixed in, actually usually we'll kind of finish this with my hands and kind of massage it together, some water. Get my hands wet and just kind of massage it together like that. Get it all mixed in together. Get my hands a little bit more. Once you've got that all mixed together, then this is gonna let it rise for a while. So in terms of a timeline, I usually start this process. I'll pull the starter out of my fridge around dinner time. Add the floured water to make that come alive. Let it rise for a couple hours, and maybe about an hour or so before going to bed, I'll do this process. Mix the dough, and then let it sit for about a half hour, and then I'll stretch it, and I'll show you that next step here in the video. Now once that's all mixed together, it'll look about like that, kind of a thick, doughy substance. And then I'll just let it rise. I'll usually just grab a towel. Just like to get it wet, a little damp, and then just put it on top. And then let this rise for about 30 minutes to an hour, and then we'll fold it next. Now once the dough has risen for 30 minutes to an hour, I'll uncover it. Risen a little bit, not too much. At this point, it's still kind of moist. So I like to add a little bit of flour, probably maybe a half a cup or so. I'll just sprinkle that on top. And then just mix that in. And this stage is just stretching the dough. So I'll do this. Some say to do this 2 or 3 times. I typically just do it once. So about a half hour after I make the dough to an hour after I make it, I'll just stretch it. So I'm just pulling it apart, stretching it a little bit, and then kneading it. I'll do this for a few minutes. And here it's getting me more of like a loaf consistency, as you can see it. Stretch that out and fold it in. And once I've done that for about 30 seconds to a minute, then I'll cover it and let it rise, and that's pretty much it until the morning. So this is right at the end of the day, and then I'll cover it and it'll rise for probably 12 hours or so. Here you can see that loaf. In the morning it'll be it'll double or so in size, and then we'll form it into loaves. Okay, now it's the next morning. The dough has been rising for about 12 hours. You can see it's risen almost to the top of the bowl here, doubled or so in size. So now it's ready to be divided out and formed into loaves. So I'm going to just put 2 pieces of parchment paper down. I've got some bowls that I'm going to place them in. First I'm going to get my hands wet a little bit, and then just loosen the dough from the side of the bowl. And I'll divide this into two loaves. I'm just getting my hands wet so the dough doesn't stick. Here's the dough. A very scientific method of dividing. I'll just break it in half and then just roll it into a smooth ball and put it on the parchment paper. Sometimes one is a little bit bigger than the other, not a big deal. thing I failed to mention last night is once I use the starter, I just put that back in the fridge as is. You could feed it a little bit if you wanted to grow it, create some more. But now I'm just placing, and then it just stays in the fridge till you use it again. I'm just placing these loaves into these balls. This will help kind of form it into a round bowl. Wash my hands. And then I just place these, I'll place these in the refrigerator and let them just stay there. They could be in there. Usually I'll let them rise a little bit in there for about 3 or 4 hours. But I've left them in there for a day or so. Sometimes I've forgotten that I'm baking bread until the next day. But anyway, so they can just stay in here. It'll harden a little bit and rise a little bit while it's in here. And then just leave them in the fridge until you're ready to bake. I'll just go over here, place these in the refrigerator, make some room. And I've got the starter back in there. Anyway, so this is gonna just stay and cool for 3 or 4 hours. It's the morning now, probably around lunchtime I'll bake. Okay, the next step is to preheat the oven with the Dutch ovens in there. I bake the bread in the Dutch oven, so 450 degrees. And I've got 2 of these 5-quart Dutch ovens that I'll place in here. Just bought these on Amazon. I bought this size because they're big enough still, but small enough to fit 2 in the oven at the same time. So put that in the oven, and I'll leave that in there for 30 to 45 minutes so those can get nice and hot, and then we'll bake it. All right, we've had our loaves rising in the refrigerator for a couple hours. You see they've risen a little bit. Now we're gonna bake them. So a couple steps here. First thing is I'm gonna get the knife with some butter, and I'm gonna cut a little slit in the top of the bread. This will help it to breathe as it cooks. You can see I just make a little X. Some people draw different designs, but I just put an X there in the top. And I'm gonna take out my Dutch ovens that have been preheating. They've been in there, 45 minutes or so. Take these out. See, those are pretty warm. I'm gonna place the loaves of bread in the Dutch ovens. And then we're gonna do something, a little trick that I learned to help make it soft. We're gonna take a scoop of ice, probably about 2 cups of ice, and put it in each Dutch oven. Put that with the lid on, careful that that steam's coming out hot. And we'll do that for each one. This is just pebble ice, but obviously any ice will do. What this I've found is really helps, the steam kind of cooks the bread a little bit while it's in there. It helps make it more soft. So we'll put the Dutch ovens in the oven. Again, this is baking at 450 degrees. We're going to bake it in 2 phases. The first phase has the lids on. So put it in. I'm going to set the timer for 30 minutes. Push start, and so that'll bake for 30 minutes with the lids on. And then we'll take the lids off for the last 15 minutes to finish it. All right, so the timer just went off. So now we're going to come in and just take the lids off of these. And so those are going to bake for another 15 minutes with the lids off. And we'll be done. All right, the timer just went off for that last 15 minutes. Looking golden brown on the top. Set the other side. And we're not done yet. Some people like a really hard crust. When it comes out, it's pretty hard. But I like a soft crust. I'll show you one last step in making that. Take it out with the parchment paper. And as I take it out, I will put it in a rag and wrap it up and let it cool like this. Just wrap it up and close it. And the other rag. Here's my wife. Oh, just dropped it. Fumble. My wife coming in to laugh at me. My videos. My viral video. All right, here it is. And we'll let it rest for about 30 minutes and we'll wrap it one more time. All right, we've got our loaves here. They've been cooling for about 30 minutes. Now the crust, instead of hard, is nice and soft. Last thing I like to do, they're still a little bit warm. If you put them in a Ziploc bag now, it'll put too much moisture in the bag. So I just wrap it with some saran wrap. And then I'll just let it continue to cool in that. Once it's completely cooled, that's when I'll put it in a Ziploc bag and store it for when it's ready to eat. But there you go, sourdough bread to perfection.